Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program produced and funded by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Ralph Eisler.
And I'm Jonas Holdeman, and we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and free of supernatural beliefs. And we welcome others who may be interested in learning more about humanism and free thought.
Sure. This is a call-in show. However, we only have one phone line. So if you can't get through, we invite you to tweet them to us at FFTVKNOX. While we go over a few announcements, we invite you to start calling in. Now, at the number on the screen. Get a pen and paper, and we'll give you our email address later in the show.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup at a bar or eatery. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's in the Old City, starting around 5:30. Look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table. And as Matt Dillahunty at Atheist Experience says, everyone is welcome to our happy hour for food, drink, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings. The first and third Sunday mornings are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussion. The book club meets on the second Sunday, and the reflections group get together for a potluck lunch on the fourth Sunday. The June 14th book club will feature Stuff Matters, Exploring the Marvelous Materials That Shape Our Man-Made World by Mark Miodowink. Visit our website for additional details, including time and locations.
Today's topic is, should the law accommodate religious beliefs? We have recently seen a spate of so-called religious freedom restoration acts being passed, or at least proposed in several states. These are statutes that would legalize discrimination against certain groups of people if you don't agree with their beliefs or lifestyle based on your own religious beliefs. They are essentially Jim Crow laws aimed mainly at the LGBT community, but any individuals or groups can be targeted. This is a slippery slope towards establishing a theocratic presence in what has been a secular democracy. But before we discuss the implication of such laws, let's look at some items in the news.
Yeah. First item is not quite current since Freethought Forum was preempted last week, but we think we really should comment on it. It's on the Irish referendum to amend their constitution to allow gay marriage. The vote not only permits gay marriage, but amends Ireland's constitution to do it. As I said, that's a really much more of a leap than we've taken in this country. So the actual amendment says that it will approve marriage of two people without distinction as to their sex. And gay couples in the country will be able to marry as soon as this summer. The referendum was approved by a whopping 62% of the voters in a country where homosexuality was a criminal offense as late as 1993. This is an amazing change in the Irish people there. So the result's a stunning blow for the Roman Catholic Church, which has held a stranglehold on the Irish people throughout history, and which teaches that marriage is solely between a man and a woman. The Archbishop of Dublin said the results showed the Church needed to do a reality check. I'm all for reality checks, okay, since it clearly wasn't reaching young people with this message. Well, my opinion is that I do think the Church is reaching young people with this message. The young people simply are not buying into the message of an organization that is irrelevant to the 21st century. Sociologist Tom Inglis, author of Moral Monopoly, The Rise and Fall of the Catholic Church in Modern Ireland, says, it's an indication of how the Church no longer acts as the moral conscience of Irish society, in view of the religious leaders having been accused of protecting predator priests and disrupting inquiries. The inability of the church to deal with the issue showed that the dysfunction and disconnection, the elitism, and the culture of the Vatican. Unfortunately, over 90% of the primary schools are still under the patronage of the Catholic Church, so they still have an influence, and they will have an influence. But this is a really rapid change in the view of the Irish people.
Well, Ralph, I think there's kind of a softer approach one could take, that the church has been teaching respect for individuals but at the same time disrespect for certain practices. And I think perhaps the younger people have begun to recognize the contradictions there and are sorting it out in a way that resonates to them.
Yes, but I think it's hard to talk about respect for people and disrespect for certain practices. I don't know how you separate that. That was the Jerry Falwell line, right? Hate the sin but love the sinners. That's never really resonated with me.
Okay, we'll have to get back to that, Ralph.
Yeah.
There's another bit of news relating to Roman Catholicism that we came across recently. Under time-honored tradition, younger nuns dutifully cared for their aging sisters. But with few young women choosing religious life, church superiors are being forced to look elsewhere for their care, and in the past year have sent dozens of nuns to the Jewish Home Life Care, a geriatric care complex in the Bronx, founded as a nursing home for elderly Jews. There are now more sisters over age 90 than under age 60, said Mary Gaucher, researcher at the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate at Georgetown University. The center's 2009 study found that 80% of the nuns in the country were over 60. Sisters of Charity of New York has seen its numbers decline from the 1960s peak of 1,350 to 270 today, and no new sisters had joined in the U.S. in 20 years. Similar losses are occurring in the priesthood. On our last show, we discussed the recent Pew poll, which showed severe losses suffered by mainline Protestant and Roman Catholic churches in the U.S. during the past 7 years. The drop in people entering the priesthood or converts especially mirrors the drop in young parishioners that the church is experiencing. It's more evident that Christian mythology is losing its grip on the public in this information age. So, on to our main topic. Should the law accommodate religious beliefs?
Yeah, and this has come to the forefront lately because of the number of religious freedom restoration acts, so-called, that have been passed in the wake of many states legalizing gay marriage, okay? But there's a little irony in this, and it's the irony comes under the so-called law of unintended consequences. It's difficult to define this specifically. It's not like a physics law or something of the sort. But it's an outgrowth of many theories and was probably best defined by sociologist Robert K. Merton in 1936. Merton wrote an article, The Unanticipated Consequences of Purposive Social Action, which covers 5 different ways that actions, particularly those taken on a large scale by governments, may have unexpected consequences. These reactions may be positive, negative, or merely neutral, but they veer off from the intent of the initial action. And Merton also described 5 reasons why a law or change might fall under the heading of the law of unintended consequences. The 2 top reasons why the law of unintended consequences works, according to Merton, is that the framers of a social change are either ignorant of possible far-reaching effects of the law, or they make errors when they develop a change, errors that don't have the effects that they desired. Now, isn't that strange?
There are a number of stories one could tell. But let me just comment that when I first read your script about Merton, I found a copy
Yeah, good
on
man.
the internet and read through it. And I must say, the reading was a little difficult, but very fascinating. And I need to read through it again. I mean, he considers many different ways in which social kind of actions can result in consequences either to the what he called the actor or to others. And I think that this is kind of a thing that every citizen, particularly lawmakers, should commit to heart before they start passing a lot of the laws.
It's the old adage, be careful what you ask for, you may receive it.
Yeah. Okay. On the political scene, we're witnessing a continuing sequence of examples of unintended consequences following the passage of the so-called Religious Freedom Restoration Acts. In 1994, Congress almost unanimously passed an RFRA to ensure the interests of religious freedom are protected. The bill was sponsored by progressive Democrats Chuck Schumer and Ted Kennedy, and it was signed into law by President Bill Clinton. The Supreme Court ruled that the law could be applied to the federal government, but was unconstitutional as applied to the states. In response, 20 individual states subsequently passed their own versions of RFAs. And a lot of the motivations for this law came from an interest in protecting the rights of Native Americans from expansion of the government projects on land they considered sacred, and in allowing the use of hallucinogenic drug peyote in certain religious ceremonies. However, other cases involving religious freedom have also been involved in the enforcement.
Yeah, and the Supreme Court ruling was that the government had to have a compelling interest, to pass such a law that might violate someone's religious freedom. And it had to be the least intrusive way possible of achieving the result that they wanted. And so a lot of these decisions get kind of complicated and very sticky, messed up in this type of talk, whether it's the least intrusive way of achieving a goal or not. Does the government really have a vested interest in taking sacred land, from Indians or something like that for projects, whatever? So why are we talking about this subject today? Well, it's because these Religious Freedom Restoration Acts are being used in ways that their sponsors had never intended them to be used. The law of unintended consequences is running rampant. Propelled by one of the most egregious decisions made by the U.S. Supreme Court, which is in the Burwell versus Hobby Lobby decision. This is a landmark decision allowing closely held for-profit corporations to be exempt from laws to which its owners religiously object if there's a less restrictive means of furthering the law's interest. This is an interpretation of the federal RFRA Act. It's the first time the court has recognized a for-profit corporation's claim of religious belief. And this ruling is in the same vein as the even more egregious decision made by the Supreme Court a few years ago, the so-called Americans United decision that stated for political purposes, corporations are people.
I can recall going into Hobby Lobby, and they have this background music, and this particular day, all of the music you could recognize the themes of different hymns associated with it. So I, as a customer, that day, had the opportunity to vacate the premises eventually, but I imagine if we had employees that don't necessarily agree with the particular themes. They might be Jewish or Muslim or Hindu or whatever, but being subject to this particular somewhat Protestant.
Yeah, it's a brainwashing effect, really, if you have to listen to that all day. I mean, you can go crazy. Maybe it's like the water torture technique, drip, 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 you know, even if it's mild in the background.
Maybe as bad as all of the Christmas songs at Christmas time. The specific case concerned the mandate in the Affordable Health Care Act requiring employers to cover certain contraceptives for their female employees. The Hobby Lobby stores objected on religious grounds. The court agreed, noting that a less restrictive alternative was being provided for religious nonprofits. But 3 days later, the court issued an injunction to the alternative, leaving no legal path for female employees of closely held corporations to receive birth control funding if the employer objected. This ruling could have widespread impact, allowing corporations to claim religious exemptions from the federal laws.
Yeah, it's a catch-22 situation, isn't it? I think the court has tied themselves in knots on this. I'm sad to see that we've come down to the situation where one arm of the federal government really is making decisions about religious beliefs or imposition of religious beliefs. And the New York Times wrote, the decision swept aside accepted principles of corporate law, religious liberty to grant owners of closely held for-profit companies the unprecedented right to impose their religious views on employees.
Well, I think problems are going to get worse. And in my opinion, it kind of revolves around the whole concept of what is religion. I mean, it's so loosely defined as to be contradictory. And so you can have people with conflicting views, which they claim, and no test for the validity of the claim, that are based on their religious beliefs.
Yeah.
And so now how do you begin to sort this kind of thing out?
Right, exactly. I mean, you have two people who have diametrically opposite beliefs. And in the past, I don't see that the government or the law has been based on beliefs all that much. Okay, maybe I'm wrong when you get down to the real details, but the law is set up supposedly to be neutral to one's religious beliefs or what have you. I don't know. And as you can see, people will come back and forth on this. I mean, you know, your rights stop at my nose type of thing. And they just don't seem to be able to craft these decisions narrowly enough, I think. There always seems to be some loophole where somebody can slip through and try to exploit them. And so while we certainly have religious freedom in this country, we don't really or shouldn't really have the religious freedom to impose our beliefs on other people.
Yeah, there, and in fact, this is one of the things that Merleton talks about, is that you can have conflicting views of society. Like I believe in vaccination of the population to prevent the spread of disease. It can save lives. It can save discomfort. It can save the expense and so on. So someone comes along and says, "Oh, I think vaccination is against my religious beliefs. And so now trying to accommodate this kind of a statement can put the rest of the population at risk and influencing wider held views. See, this is one of the things Merton talks about, how pursuing one particular point of view can conflict with the general welfare of the population that everyone would agree on. He gives an example might be that it was argued that if people work hard to make as much money as they can, if everyone is doing this, then this should result in a more wealthy population and everyone participating in the benefits. But if one person is pursuing riches to the detriment of others, con artists or even just people with economic power, then it can really be disruptive to these other kind of things that we would like to see.
Right. It's, those people who want to pursue a social Darwinism type of society, where the guys that are at top gain the power and then money and then even more power and more money, until you have basically a feudal society where you have a few oligarchs at the top. Okay, well, we have a phone call here. Why don't we take it?
Okay, here we go. Caller, you're on the air. Would you give us your name or nickname, please?
Charles from Central Illinois.
Hey, Charles.
Hey,
good to hear you.
Charles. How you doing today?
Better that the weather has cleared up, because it was cold, wet, and windy yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay, now, today's show is on whether or not Christians are being persecuted, as they put it.
Yeah, because that's what, I think that's what's motivated a lot of these religious freedom restoration acts that, what started this were gay marriage couples who wanted to have wedding cakes or photographers or florists or something, and they got turned down by these businesses who didn't agree with their lifestyle. And and I think there have been some suits, or at least certainly a number of complaints about businesses doing that. After all, they're licensed businesses, should serve everybody. And so the latest thing is that Christians say they're being persecuted if they have to serve a gay couple.
Or if the law states that they have to, yes.
Yeah. Right.
Okay? Interestingly enough, some of these same arguments I think I heard from during the period of Loving versus Virginia, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is actually not something very new.
No.
For a long time, there were and still are in many states the blue laws, where because of religious doctrines, buy alcohol or do certain things
Right.
on a Sunday.
Right.
Stores will have to be closed and so forth.
Right.
And several states' constitutions strictly forbid an atheist from running for office.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you, I grew up in Pittsburgh, and we had blue laws at the time I was a kid there. And there were a couple people who started the business, and their names were Kelly and Cohen, and one was Catholic and one was Jewish. And so they stayed open 7 days a week because Cohen claimed that Saturday was his Sabbath, and he took it off. And Kelly claimed Sunday was his, and he took it off. And they tried this ploy for a while, but eventually they had to close on Sunday.
Yeah, probably our population is young enough in general that the majority don't remember or are not aware of the blue laws.
Yeah.
And the effects they had on people. One can argue, well, okay, there are people who want to go to church and so on, so they
Right.
shouldn't be forced to work and so
Right.
on. But then, as Kelly and Curran found, a less restrictive
Less
way around it.
and Charles, we can remember when there were miscegenation laws in this country, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you would find preachers who were unwilling to marry a black and white couple, a mixed race couple, right? That's very
In
much.
fact, they were all based on the one drop of blood
Yeah,
concept.
right.
Exactly how they determined which drop of blood was the actual drop of blood, and the 8 gallons of blood is beyond me, but they did.
Yeah, that was pretty arbitrary. I've often wondered that too. But but anyhow, I view the gay marriage bit sort of like that, frankly.
Oh, yes. Have you ever heard of Miss Betty Bowers, the world's most perfect
yes.
Christian?
Yes, yes.
She does a YouTube video on traditional biblical marriages,
Uh-huh.
and this includes being forced to marry your widowed, your deceased brother's widow,
Right.
and you're allowed to have all the concubines you're allowed to take care of properly, and you can, buy your neighbor's daughter as a slave and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
So, there are a lot of things in the Bible that the vast majority of these Christians concerning marriage, they don't have a clue about.
No, they want to ignore them in most cases, I think. Last time we had the show on here, we had a caller who called in and said, well, if 2 men or 2 women can marry each other, what's to prevent them from marrying their dog? I mean, they sort of take it to a ridiculous extreme. The dog obviously can't consent to the
Yeah.
marriage.
That's the part that all the slippery slope people keep missing,
Yeah,
Informed consent is part and parcel of it. Unless, of course, you're, a biblical patriarch giving to one of your friends your daughter in marriage, in which case the woman doesn't have any say in anything.
yeah, right, sure.
Yeah, I have a very nice neighbor who, when he moved in, was unmarried, and so he went to one of these Christian singles groups.
Oh, yeah.
I guess it was maybe at the First Baptist Church or something like that.
Yeah.
And so we went to that and met this woman, and they dated for a while and decided to get married. But it really didn't last because before long she divorced him because he wasn't Christian enough.
Now, wait a minute here. As I recall, it states specifically the only thing you're allowed to break a marriage for is fornication. So apparently they're trying to have their cake and eat it too there.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I've read about cases like this too, that you have one person who's extremely religious and very rigid about it in a marriage, and that doesn't work.
Yeah.
That's just not going to work. So, I think there's another basic problem here that I think the Christian community hasn't come to grips with, and that is they consider homosexuality a lifestyle of choice, whereas all the medical research that you read say there's a lot of it that is simply hereditary in the genes, the way people feel.
Yeah, well,
It's not just the genes. It's how the genes go online and activate and develop. There are a lot of factors into that, and some of those genes directly influence how your brain chemistry and neurology work.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's where the human sexuality is.
yeah, well,
That's what I mean. I'm trying to say that there are that it's not unnatural in the sense. It's not usual perhaps, but there are good arguments, biological arguments, that homosexual tendencies are part of what your makeup is, your physical makeup is for certain people.
yeah. Well, I think that the attempts to find homosexuality or gay gene have failed. So I guess I wouldn't use the term genetic as it's often used. But then there's the other thing that we often don't think about is the epigenetic. That is, this is something that can pass from generation to generation, and as Charles was mentioning, the epigenetics as well as the genetics affect the development, and we all start off pretty much the same. We all have similar maybe variations of different parts of the body, but basically they're all the same. And in the development of the brain, if at a certain stage hormones and so on happen to affect that particular developmental stage, then one can see how a person could be physically of one gender and could end up with the brain structure connections associated with a different gender.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not saying that this is something that passed on like blue eyes or whatever, but it has to do with your basic biological makeup, however you want to call it, genetic or not, I don't care. So, and we've seen this on the news every day this week, that Bruce Jenner is now Caitlyn Jenner, has felt all his life like he was a woman in a man's body, something like
Yes.
that. So,
And that, I've seen the hoopla going on about that, and did catch the very beginning of the show before your screen died about the atheists, about the vote in Ireland. And so there's a whole slew of people out there marking how this is the end of civilization and the beginning of the end times and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
And, as I recall, they said the exact same thing about when John F. Kennedy was elected president, because he was Catholic.
Yeah, well, you know, the end is always near, right?
Yeah, it's been there since like 1,600 years, ever since the first bishops concluded that it is the beginning of the end. You know, when after Erlich and the Vandals looted Rome, they concluded that it was the beginning of the end times.
Right. Well, we're going to take a little midpoint break here now, Charles. So
Okay.
Thank you very much for calling in, and we always enjoy talking to you.
Okay, well, you have a good day.
Okay. So, just in case,
Well, in case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions. Shows are live most every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Community Access Television. You can also see it streaming online outside of the Knoxville area to the whole world. You just go to ctvknox.org and click on the appropriate box, and you'll be able to see
Our show.
bright places.
Okay. So this is a call-in show. We're live today, June 2nd. Viewers can call in now to the number on the screen or tweet them to us at FFTVKNOX.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, meets 2 times a week. We have evening meetups for fun, food, drink, and conversation. ASK's purpose is to supply a venue for community, camaraderie, and outreach to atheists, agnostics, freethinkers, and other like-minded persons in the East Tennessee area.
Okay, well, we're going to run a little promotional now for Ask and for RET, if Sam would do that.
Questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else? Well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun. Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org. If you live in or...
Okay, well, we're back. The Rationalists of East Tennessee, following up on that little promotional, remind you, has Sunday activities involving lively presentations, discussions of subjects that are topical and timeless. Once a month we get together for a book club, and you need not to have read the book to attend, but it helps. And both the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee help provide a social outlet where you'll find if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Now, the Rationalists of East Tennessee is sponsoring a one-of-a-time event, a unique event. So could you tell us about that?
Okay, coming up, the weekend of July 4th, RET is sponsoring the Smoky Mountain Freethought Advance. Not a retreat, it's an advance. And the good news is that the event is going to be held in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains in Townsend on July 3rd and 4th. The meals are going to be a la carte at an additional fee. Lodging and advance are at Tremont Lodge and Resort, 7726 East Lamar Alexander Parkway in Townsend. And you can get information about this on the RET website, rationalist.org, and find the phone numbers for contacting the resort. There will be a 10% discount if RET is mentioned as the group you're associated with. A block of rooms will be held only until May 29th, so reserve soon. There's a stunning list of speakers already confirmed to come, plus there will be traditional Freethought Jeopardy and even fireworks. For details and mail-in registration forms, one may contact Alita Ledendecker at aledendecker@me.com.
Yeah. Okay. We're a little past the deadline for the block of reserved rooms there.
Oh.
But I'm sure that there will probably be rooms available. So if you're interested, please go look at the website and or call in here, whatever, and see.
Yeah, this is kind of a continuation of the event or in lieu of the event at Lake Acacia down in Alabama that is not being held this year.
Yes, it was a long-going, not retreat, but advance over the 4th of July weekend down at Lake Hypatia in Alabama. That's been going on for years, but they couldn't do it this year, so RET is taking up the flame there and keeping it burning up there in Townsend or wherever.
Oh, and for our regular viewers, we understand that Joe Barnhart will be back next week, and he tells me that topic for his program will be sacrifices viewed from the secular and religious perspectives.
Wow, that ought to be bloody good.
Okay.
Okay, well, back to the unintended consequences we talked about. As we've mentioned, these states have passed these Religious Freedom Restoration Acts to try to protect Christians from serving people that they don't like and not being sued for it, et cetera, et cetera. But what's an unintended consequence? Well, an unintended consequence can be...
I'll tell you, this one, maybe it goes back to Aesop's fables or something. There's King Midas.
Yeah.
He was enamored with gold and had an opportunity to have his a wish granted. And so he wished that everything he touched would turn to gold.
Yeah.
And so he touched this and it turned to gold, and touched this. And his daughter came in and she ran up and put her arms around him and was instantly turned to gold. There's your unintended consequence.
Okay. All right, that's a good one. But that's a fabulous one. Using the word fabulous as it was originally intended. Anyhow, here's one that's real. It's what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. The Satanic Temple is a religious group based in New York, but has followers across the country, and is using the RFRA Act to fight informed consent laws, which mandate the women considering abortions must be given state-approved literature about the procedure. The Satanic Temple is also using the state of Missouri for religious freedom, specifically for the right to have an abortion without the added burden of a 72-hour waiting period. I don't think this is what the legislatures who passed these laws intended them to do. So what do abortions have to do with Satanism? Well, first it's important to note that the so-called Satanic Temple is not, in fact, full of devil worshippers. The tenets of the Satanic Temple involve: one should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures. Beliefs should conform to our best scientific understanding of the world. We should not distort scientific beliefs to fit our belief, the scientific facts to fit our beliefs. And one's body is inviolable, subject to one's will alone. And it is under this last tenet that the Satanic Temple is suing. A woman identified as Mary Doe is the subject of a lawsuit. Like many women in the many states with highly restrictive abortion laws, Mary could not afford extra costs imposed by the mandated waiting period. The overlong waiting period is just one method the Christian Republicans have of trying to thwart a woman's right to abortion. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out, because I don't see how the courts can rule, in favor of, say, Christian religious freedom for what they want, and rule against some other group.
Yeah, now, this Satanic Temple apparently has nothing to do with worshiping Satan or anything like that. But it would seem that they are using that name much the way to to kind of get in the face of people.
Yeah,
Like
I agree.
years ago, when sex was so hush hush, you would see things, big words, sex, and then now that I have your attention,
Yeah,
here's the
right.
message.
Right.
So I just wonder if this satanic temple isn't doing the same thing to get attention, so that they can pass along this other rather humanistic
Right.
set of.
I think you may be right about that. I don't disagree. I don't know any of the people there, what they are. But you bring up the word sex, which I guess when you and I were growing up, you couldn't show a married couple sleeping in the same bed on television. Right?
That's right. Yeah,
They had to have separate
twin beds.
separate
Yeah.
twin beds, something like that. Well, we've come a ways away from that. But if you look at these laws that are being passed, these Religious Freedom Restoration Acts, and in fact, if you look at most of the program for the Christian Republican right, it has to do with sex, so far as I can tell. I mean, all these LGBT controversies have to do with sex. All the abortion laws have to do with reproduction. There's a real obsession in the Christo Republican community with sex. They just can't come to grips with it for some reason. And that's what occasions a lot of these laws and a lot of the hatred that you see. And in the same vein, you know, people want to shut down Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood has maybe 5% of their business concerns abortions, right? The rest of it concerns trying to give kids sexual education so they don't have to have an abortion. But nevertheless, the real hardliners, they are afraid of sex. So,
But you know, and I think of another contrast where I guess in Islam there seems to be this real focus on sex, requiring that, you know, one wonders if the men aren't you know, sexual perverts that
Yeah.
require all the women to be completely covered, or else they're going to get completely out of hand. So on one hand, you have the Christian and Muslim religions that have these inhibitions against sex, but then in some of the Hindu you know, practices and writings and so on, sex was kind of glorified.
yeah, the Kama Sutra,
Yeah,
Hindu book.
So again, this kind of contrast shows that that sex is not necessarily, particular practice is not necessarily associated with religion. Per se.
No, but I'm just saying that a lot of Christianity, though, I think gets its impetus from saying that you know what is right way to have sex and you want to impose it on everybody else, you know, or on abortion or what have you. That's just one of the things I have. When I look at these people, I just seem totally obsessed with the subject. Anyhow, here's another unintended consequence.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember Michael Newdow. He was a physician from California who has tried to have In God We Trust either disqualified as a national motto or taken off the coins that we have or the bills that we have. And he has so far been not too successful in doing that. And he's tried to build his case on the First Amendment to the Constitution, you know, the law that says the government shall not make any law for or against religion, basically, okay? But now, with these Freedom Restoration Acts, you don't have to base your case on that. You can base it on the RFRA, and the stringency is not quite so tight, I think, for getting run. So if I know Newdow, he is pretty much of a bulldog on trying to stick with something like this. And I think that he believes that these recent rulings, like in the Hobby Lobby case, may open a path to challenging the "In God We Trust" motto on the coins.
Well, I remember being corrected by a minister that God would be spelled with a capital G because that's a proper name. That G-O-D, capital G-O-D, is the name of this particular God. And so now if the inscription says, "In God," this capital G, "we trust," then it would seem to be endorsement of a particular deity as opposed to all the others.
Yeah, it was a strange ruling when Newdow brought this case up, and California Court of Appeals, or that District Court of Appeals there, I was a little, I thought it was a little strange ruling from them. They're usually very liberal on stuff, but what they said was, this doesn't have any religious significance. You know, it's just like something you say, like, I can't give an example right offhand, but you know, go Vols or something like that, and it doesn't exactly have anything to do with religion. That it's become so banal, just being on the cords and on the coins.
You mean like a remark, "Oh God," or
Yeah.
"God damn it," or
Yeah, something like that.
that.
Yeah, swear word. I don't know. So we have these two examples. The one from the Satanic Temple, one with Newdow may be trying to bring another case, and also in Indiana, the First Church of Cannabis is planning to begin smoking marijuana as part of their religious services in July, claiming that their otherwise illegal drug use is exempted under Indiana's Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Now, this certainly must be going to bring some heads into collision here.
Yeah, and at some point, the higher courts are going to have to weigh in on this.
Yeah.
And if since peyote and the hallucinogenic mushrooms are allowed, one wonders about Timothy O'Leary's
LSD.
claim that LSD as a hallucinogenic was a religious kind of ritual.
Yes. So we're wondering when the first church of LSD might get underway here.
Get resurrected.
This is just a whole mess, and I can't see it anything except a bonanza for lawyers in the coming years in the courts. So, but how about our question up there? Nobody's really called in about it. Are Christians really being persecuted if they refuse to serve a gay couple?
If they are denied the right to, are they being persecuted if they are denied?
Yeah. If
they're-
they're denied the right, yeah. I probably didn't phrase that too well. But
I didn't say that right, did I?
well,
If they're allowed.
yeah,
to-
yeah. If
they're not allowed
if they
to.
can't refuse to
Yeah,
serve
okay, there you
a
go.
couple without fear of maybe being sued or something, are they being really persecuted? I don't think so. You know, for the South had Jim Crow laws for years. Blacks not welcome, okay? There were many businesses in the South that refused to serve black people. And we fought this fight And you'd have thought it would have been over long ago, that people, just because of the color of their skin or sexual orientation or something like that, wouldn't have to refight all of these. I saw a little ad up that some Christian group had put up, that shows a black person. It says, if I can remember correctly, sort of born that way. And maybe a Chinese person say, born that way, or a woman saying, born that way. But then a homosexual person, not born that way. This gets back to what I said, that they think that it's, homosexuality is purely a choice for people who want to commit evil deeds. And I think it's obvious, looking at a lot of these people who have tried to utilize the same-sex marriage laws that have been passed in many states, they're not nasty people. They don't have horns sprouting out of them. Most of them just want to be with the particular person that they've been with all their lives. And the only reason that I can see for declaring it as marriage or getting the rights of marriage is for the laws of property transfer and ownership and things like this. That it's, you could have some sort of a civil union.
Yeah, I think that the emphasis for the gay rights probably can go back to the laws that were passed about medical confidentiality laws. And basically, unless you were a member of the family, you couldn't get medical information. And so one of the claims was that that gay people who loved each other could not, did not have the same rights to medical information and making medical decisions and so on that other people had. So I think that law, an unintended consequence, was to put the gay rights on the straight track.
On the road to asking for marriage. Yeah, another unintended consequence, isn't it? Boy, that's really, wow, we could probably have a lot of fun with this if we just go back far enough in history to some of these laws and look at how people have used them and how they have turned out and what it has meant. But anyhow, we're getting right down to the end here, so we've only got about a minute to go. So it's time to start wrapping things up. So get out your pen and paper. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee.
Please send us feedback. Leave voicemail at 865-272-9060 or email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
Yeah, and you can see this show most Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. As I say, we were preempted last week because Monday was a holiday, and so I think it's the Knox County Commission maybe that has their meetings then and had to move over to it. So we want to thank Sam and
Forrest
and Lee.
Freethought Forrest is out there manning the telephone.
Out there manning the telephones. I didn't have many calls today, so he's probably seen. But anyhow, for all their technical help, to the staff at CTV Knox and to all our callers, we offer